Hello and welcome to the video commentary for Goblyn issue 8A. I am Solomon Mars, creator of Goblyn, volume 1 of the 555 saga. Yay! Yeah, this cover is interesting. Round. I don't know, it's just a kind of a basic cover. I'll be honest, I made it at the last minute. Like, I was sitting there and I had no idea what kind of cover, which is the case for a lot of my covers. I generally don't do the cover first. I do the book first and then try to think how to tie in the cover to the story that, I just did. And, I don't know. I mean, some would say that makes for a bad composition, or a bad method of creation, because, some would consider the cover the most important part of a book because it's your initial impression. I say phooey to that, because for me, I have to know what the guts of the book is like first before I can compose the cover, because the cover has to capture the essence of the book. And how can I know the essence of the book unless I create the interior? And knowing what's going to happen inside the story, like inside the actual book, means nothing if I start with the cover first, then make the interior, because it won't be in the same spirit of the thing, whereas if I do the interior first, I know all the colors I've used, I know just the way everything played out, I could technically do it right after I finish penciling the first book, but I don't know why I think I may have done that twice or maybe 3 times in all the books that I've done so far, and I don't know, I usually jump so quick from the penciling stage to the coloring stage, and in fact, most recently with probably starting around like 11B, I started actually doing the book where I was coloring and penciling at the same time. I did all the technically thumbnailing, but all the sketch, the sketch, the roughing of the work. All the pages are roughed out in a couple of days, and then I start going through and I start doing cleanup. And I generally do it about 10 pages. I'll do 10 pages at a time, where in the morning I'll pencil, I'll do the cleanups, the penciling on. A lot of my animation terminology is mixing and crossing over into it. I'll do the cleanups and scan them all in that morning, and then I'll spend the rest of the afternoon coloring those 10 pages. And I just keep doing that, and I try to knock out about 50 to 55, if not 60 pages total in the book. If I have to sacrifice it, like 55 to 60 is my buffer zone. It's like, you have that much extra to tell the story, but if you can't really go too much over, or it slows down the release of the book, the issue, which has been the case lately. I've slowed down, and not really lately, as of this recording, with 12A and 12B, I think I was just fell behind. I fell behind on 11B, I think, and ended up getting caught in that catching up phase with 12A and 12B, and just couldn't, catch up. The weeks started running in all together. Anyways, but yeah, I don't know, but sometimes the end results of the covers using this process are good. They yield good results. And sometimes the cover is not so great to me. This one I like, but it doesn't jump out at me like some other covers from the past and some covers that are coming up. in future issues. This one just kind of states, oh, it's Jeff and something behind him, a robot, which is pretty much the case, but not really the essence of the story. It's not really what's going on. But it looks good visually. So, 8A, family. I think 8A is officially when I started using the titles, like the little, a title page kind of, not really a title, but episode title. I probably had them featured in the last couple of commentaries, because those were the CBR versions, not like the Swift versions. The Swift versions, I don't think have them up until this issue, but anyways. Oh, I know. I will talk about this. Caption boxes. I'm not a big fan. I don't normally use caption boxes or narration boxes because I feel with this story, it's supposed to be, immersive. When someone's reading it, they're reading it as a character in this world, a person in this world, not as an omniscient being watching over this world, watching things play out in this world. I'm not saying there are literally someone right there as this is taking place, but I want them to be more so in there. Experiencing it with the characters as the characters experience, not like I said, an omniscient being. That's always bothered. Well, it didn't always bother me. It definitely started bothering me later in life as I read comics, because what it does is it creates this detail to the narrative where the reader knows everything. They know everything that's going on in every single character's mind. They know everything that's going on in every aspect of the book without seeing it. Everything is being told to them. And it's a visual medium. It's a storytelling medium it has this visual presentation. So why not show them? But then you end up with some story aspects that can be slightly confusing, like the fact that the beginning of this story actually takes place a couple of weeks, 2 weeks to be exact, before Jeff and Amy's arrival at the Red Castle, which actually showed up in the last issue. In the last 2 pages of issue 7B, you see them in a boat going down the river towards the Red Castle. And that's actually 2 weeks later than the events that happened in that town with Charlie Bode and Canastra. And it's not implied at all that it's 2 weeks. But I initially didn't want to put it in here in this story at all, any narration that said this happened 2 weeks before and then the other thing is happening now. I wanted to kind of leave it up to the reader to just kind of maybe determine it or maybe not, maybe realize it or maybe not, that there's a time shift, that these pages here are actually events that happen prior to the rest of the story. But it's easy to think that they're all happening at the same time, but it really, honestly, it's inconsequential. It doesn't really matter because this is happening somewhere else. And this event happens regardless, and you experience it regardless. But for me, giving someone those narration boxes, it removes them temporarily from the immersion. It's distracting. It's kind of gaudy. But I don't like that. I don't like giving someone the omniscience, because not even I am omniscient, truly. In contrast, in the world of this story, not even I know everything that's going on. Some things actually surprise me. Like I write things on the fly. I'll change dialogue as I'm typing it, and just something that sounds better, and it changes the outcome of the story a little. and it gives me room to add something to the next story that I didn't get a chance to before. I guess I'm confessing the fact that I don't 100%. I don't write these out 100%. You know, like I know. Oh man, I think I've talked about this before. I actually think I have mentioned this before. That I know the entire story of Goblin. I know all the key points, or most of the key points. I've either written down, illustrated in some way. I know all the key events that are supposed to happen. All the minor events, they're tiny little details all in between that I create as I go. I mean, and I'm sure, it seems like it. Oh, I think I wrote this in an artist comment in the back of one of these issues, actually. But I mean, and that is honestly to keep it fresh, because if you have a story and you write the entire thing out, oops, wow, that was weird. If you write the entire thing out, then you've restricted yourself. You've created a box in which you work in, and I prefer to work, free roamingly. I like to go all over the place and just kind of work. And sure, it can create chaos, but what happens with time, with a lot of creators, a lot of writers, a lot of artists, if you look, and they're working on one particular work, they eventually wrangle it. They understand this world that they've created, and they understand how to work within this open environment. Like they know not to stray too far in any one direction until it's time to move in that direction. And I mean that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm writing these stories a little bit as I go. I mean I know the entirety of the Red Castle arc. I know all the events that are supposed to happen, but there are little things in between, dialogue that happens between the characters, that some of it is predetermined. Some of it I wrote down, and just in passing, I thought up some dialogue, and I was like, oh, that's nice. And then I said, okay, that's for this issue. Yeah, that works in this issue. This, and then some of it I'm writing on the spot. I'm writing right there on the spot as I'm roughing out the pages. I'm drawing them up, and I'm creating the dialogue right then, because that way it's more authentic to the actual artwork and to what I'm feeling at the moment. As far as the story, because where I was mentally with this story 6 months ago, if not a year, is completely different than where I am now mentally. And so if I had if I had written the entire script then, it just wouldn't have been it would lack a lot. It would pale in comparison. It wouldn't be authentic to me. But enough about that. Let's actually talk about the book. So it's the return of the character Pinion. It's a top general in the Crimson Army. I really like this character. I love his character. I'm very inconsistent with his crazy bug eyes, his little alien eyes. So inconsistent with the reflection in them. Sometimes his hair gets inconsistent, but whatever. For the longest time, he didn't have those little elf ears. When I redesigned him, the original version at some point did have the little elf ears, and then I took them off, and he had no ears at all, and I thought, that looks stupid. But I wanted to definitely get across that with all of this, that he is kind of ruthless. He's a little heartless. He's cold. He's very calculating. He is very much to the point. He's like, let's get right down to business. And what's going on here is not making him happy. This is actually back in Dunburst at the old mansion, and it's he's looking over the site of where everything burnt down, and nobody's there. All the bodies are gone. There's no evidence of anything. except for the fact that this place is burned down. So, yeah, they're going to have to find the people involved. And one of the only remaining pieces of evidence is one of the eyes from one of the Mercers, one of the bigger ones actually. Look how large that is. It's one of the bigger Mercers, the eye, and they're computers. You know, their eyes are like computers, and you can see like the little wires and stuff hanging. They're like organic computers. And you actually see for the first time that Pinion is a bit of that as well. You know, his little fingers detach and plug into the back of the eye of the Mercer, and he's reading. He's going through the footage that it recorded with its eye, because it can actually be relayed to a monitor, and someone could actually be watching it. Somebody probably was watching that, but we'll see. And this is the part where I'm talking about where you really get a good sense of Pinion's, his character, like of how cold he is. You know, you ask them how many soldiers saw the footage on the drive, and he's like, only 2. He's like, good. And he's like, kill them both, compensate their families, you know, and he doesn't want the king, the Crimson King, to find out, because the Crimson King is nuts. And if he found out that, since, you know, I mean, his family are the ones that laid down the law that logic is illegal, and if he found out that there were logic smiths alive and running around free, he would lose it, and he might destroy this whole area. He might send ships in to bomb the entire area. That's no good for anybody. That's not good for Pinion, because Pinion's like, well, that's no good for, you know, the war effort, because we're trying to make money here to fund our war effort. And, you know, he sees the Crimson King is unstable, clearly. The Crimson King is the kind of guy who would shoot himself in the foot to kill his own enemies. You know, and that's just weird. So yeah, and it caught the general. I think this guy was a general. Was this guy a general? Doesn't matter. And this part's kind of cool. I've been waiting a long time to show off Pinion's arm guns. His little guns that are inside of his arm. Oh, I love those things. Yeah, Pinion's full of surprises. I can't wait to delve thoroughly into that character, which is coming. It's definitely coming up soon. Because now he's after Jeff, J. Mephisto, and Amy. He is taking it upon himself to track them down. So we'll see how that plays out in future issues. And obviously he's not too far from where they are. I mean, they're at the Red Castle, and he's in Dunburst. And Dunburst, well, Jeff and Amy were walking and slightly running to get to where they were, and then they took a riverboat and all this extra stuff. But he's in a ship. He's flying, so he could probably get there faster if he realized where they were. But he's got to figure out where they are first. Yeah. So here we are presently, and it was brought to my attention that it's a time skip, obvious to me, but not necessarily to the reader. And I didn't really want to give it any thought. I was like, well, who cares? You know, I don't like narration boxes, and I just don't like boxes like that, because it takes you out of it. I mean, it's one thing to have word bubbles and thought bubbles, a whole nother thing to have narrative boxes and boxes with any sort of dialogue in it, because what that box represents to me is, now I, the creator, am speaking to you, the reader. That's what that represents to me. I, the creator, I, the artist, I, the editor, I, the writer. I am speaking to you, the reader. and this is where we are in the story now. And that takes you out of it. And to me, that takes you out of the immersion. And so I think it's kind of obvious that there probably will be no more of these ever, unless I see it really, really necessary. And it would have to be really, really necessary. I'm going to honestly leave it up to the readers to determine where in the situation they are, or I'll just give them cues. I'll have the characters mention how long it's been, how much time has passed. And I would have preferred doing that, but I didn't actually do it with this story because I couldn't find a proper place for it. It would have seemed really weird if just suddenly Jeff and Amy are, they're riding around in the boat, and then suddenly he goes, "Woo! I can't believe it's been 3 whole weeks," or something like that, It's just, that kind of thing is almost as bad as a narrative box, a dialogue box. So it's a matter of what fits your particular story, and dialogue boxes and narrative boxes don't fit my story. And the problem was I passed this particular issue under a few people's noses before I actually presented it to everyone. And I second guessed myself, which is kind of bad, I do that a lot. I'll second guess myself, and I thought maybe people won't realize that it's been, that time has passed, and that these events are happening at 2 different times. And so I asked around, and everyone was like, "No, I didn't realize that." And then it was suggested that I put in the dialogue boxes, and I fought it. I did. I fought for quite a while. But in the end, I was like, all right, whatever. For the sake of confusion, reader confusion, I decided to put them in. But it's funny how things change over time, and looking at it from where I am now, I wouldn't have done that. I feel I shouldn't have done it. I should have just left it because, I don't, like I've said before, I don't like holding the hand of my readers. I fully believe that everyone can figure something out given enough time. Some people will get things instantly, and some people will take a while for them to, really process, mull it over, read the entire story, and then they'll be like, oh, okay, maybe read a couple of the stories, and realize that that different events were happening at different periods of time, or just depending on whatever the story is, whatever's happening in the story, basically saying that I don't believe that any of my readers are stupid at all, and I know that everyone, could figure out eventually that those events were happening at 2 different times, obviously in 2 different places, and it just didn't matter that they were happening at 2 different times. And I just kind of feel bad that now that I put those in there, because it's an element that it was unlike anything that had happened in the book prior to this point. Prior to this point, you only saw characters speaking to each other and thinking, and then suddenly you have this third person dialogue happening, essentially, and it just bothers me now. But I definitely will not go in and take it out. What's there is there forever. That's just the way that I treat all my work. Well, not all of it, but most of it. Especially something this concrete. It's never going to show up again. So yeah, I guess then it's like, well, why did I just spend all those minutes talking about it? Because I was just I needed to explain how I felt about it. How I feel about it now versus how I felt about it then. Things changed. And this is them running through the lower half of the Red Castle. Gutstown, which is essentially the was at when the Red Castle was an actual thriving community that was new and not run down, when it was actually home to a royal family. This area was the docks, the dock town. Not really a town so much as the loading docks. I mean, this was a central hub for activity in the entire area. Like other kingdoms, traders from all over the place, people, everyone would come to this place, this castle, and just kind of immerse themselves in the culture, the multiculturalism of this area. And I mean, a lot of ships would sail into the lower half of the castle and unload all their wares. And some people would set up in here, and then there were other people that would set up further up in the castle, depending. There were different areas built for different things, but not like it is now. Like now you have this shanty town in here, and this doesn't reflect 100% what it used to look like. A lot of this stuff has been built up over the hundreds of years since this place fell. I'm sure the Red Castle, I'm trying to think about my timeline. The Red Castle fell before or just as the first Crimson King took the throne of Aspa and started kind of war all over the northern half of the continent. I mean, basically to say that its time was already past. I could be wrong. It could have been much further away than the beginning, the first king. I don't want to stop and look through my book, and I already picked it up and I'm looking through it, and it's going to take too long for me to find that page, the page where I have the timeline. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The fact is, it's not even a shell of what it used to be. It's not even a ghost of what it used to be. So anyways, and the fact that Jeff is talking about how his grandmother used to tell him stories about how beautiful the place used to be does not mean that she experienced it firsthand. She could have been told stories about it, or could have seen pictures of it, illustrations, or, well, photographs. I mean, Aravana is a very strange world, because this is my dream world. Technology mixes right in there, and some technology, seems very new to us, is kind of old to them. I mean, for crying out loud, they have mechs, and they have mechs, and then they also have steam-powered guns, and we don't even really have mech suits that you can wear, but then they'll have people that still wield swords, stuff like that. They'll have plasma rifles, or, well, even better, the fact that you have Pinion riding around in what's essentially a spaceship. Not really a spaceship, since that implies that it go into space, but technicalities. But, a very advanced flying vehicle, wingless flying vehicle. And, most times things reflect the fact that this world is very much along the lines of fantasy, like a fantasy realm, swords and sorcery kind of thing. But yet you have this very science fiction advanced technology, and you have people living in abject poverty. And that's just kind of just sort of a reflection, that's how it plays out in my dreams. In my dreams, I will often shift from one area to another. I'll be riding on a train and look out the window, and I'll see, a shanty town, and then the stop that I get off on the train is a thriving city, a very advanced city, with, like these train, I won't even get into it really, not too much, because it all appears in this story, but there's a reason. I mean, so I guess essentially why I went on that tangent is because, yeah, cameras exist. Basically, is what I was saying. While you'll crack open a book that has paintings in it, hand painted illustrations. Someone might also have a camera, and cameras to them are very old. Not everyone has one, but they're old. And there's just this world stuck between time, where some things that would be advanced to us are old to them, and then some things that are, advanced to them, or we're like, what is that? Why is that? That seems so out of place and ancient, but it's not. It's weird. It's a bit like I originally saw the original Star Wars trilogy. What is that, 4, 5, and 6? Like, it's this world where it's run down, but it's far more advanced than we've experienced. I mean, they have warp technology, but oh my gosh, I mean, Luke Skywalker is like a dirt farmer. It's so weird. I mean, what is he doing? I mean, but everything looks so run down. It's like it's clearly the end of a civilization. As multi galactic as it is, clearly it's the end of a civilization. And those are people living within the end of that civilization, and that's kind of the way that I see this world that's been developing in my dreams. It's these people living in kind of the end of a civilization, and not even really caring. They don't care, because the time that they're living is just the time that they're living. It is what it is, and they're just enjoying it. And that's Jeff kind of explaining the what is going on. Like what the castle is about. Yeah. Okay. I thought I was right. Yeah. He says that it was abandoned before the war, and then people started coming in that were displaced by the war. Yeah. That makes sense, with what I was saying. Yeah, and he's talking about the water, and the reason why the water looks the way it does is because the red clay that they used to build the exterior of the castle, because it's a mix between red clay and gray steel. I don't remember anymore. Wow, that's sad. Yeah, I want to say yes. Black, gray. There are a couple of different kinds. Black, gray, blue. Black is the most brittle. Gray is the most common. Blue is the rarest. And all these are made from what is called clay. These are the same things that are their monetary system, their money, the coins and stuff, the currency. That was a million different ways to say money. It's the same thing, They mint these things out of the different clays. The blue clay, most expensive coins are minted out of. Then there's the gray clay, which is not clay. It's actually minerals that are smelted into essentially metal. Iron. Why am I thinking clay and steel? It's gray iron, black iron, blue iron, blue clay. Yeah. So anyways, but it's eroding. It's eroding, and it's getting into the water. It's polluted the water. The castle has been there so long The water is just polluted. And the pollution has actually gotten into the soil in the surrounding area, and it's gotten into the roots of the plants. They've been soaking it up so long that they're not dying. It's actually changed their the color, and it's something that's realistic. It can happen in reality. Although more often than not, it kills the plants. With natural erosion, not toxic pollution really, but kind of the kind of pollution that comes from eroding minerals, naturally eroding minerals. And that's all this is. Even though it's constructed artificially, it's made of natural minerals that would erode. It was known when they built it that eventually it would crumble. All things crumble. And it's kind of like flamingos. They get their pink color from the specific foods that they eat, which are, I think they're not plankton or shrimp or something. I don't remember what it was. I just remember as a kid I found out, and they were eating this certain kind of food constantly. It's like one of their primary sources of food, and so they eat them, and that's what gives their feathers that pink, lush color. And naturally, a flamingo is just white, sort of a dirty white, And I mean, like, I guess I don't know if there's a zoo near where you may be, but the zoo here in Atlanta, where I'm at right now, there's a mix, and you can see that some of the flamingos are pink, and you can tell those are ones that were brought in, and the ones that have white feathers are younger, and they don't eat. They haven't eaten all the stuff that turns their feathers that pinkish color over time. I'm not sure if they feed this to them, the specific thing to them artificially or not. I don't know, but I've never seen all pink flamingos at a zoo. You see them in the wild because they know where to migrate to in order to feed on this specific food source. But anyways, I've been talking all sorts of stuff for 30-something minutes now, so yeah, let's keep going. So Jeff introduces Gutstown. I like the way the roof of this lower section kind of looks. That's kind of cool. I like that sort of over the top of them, kind of over their heads, and you see like where things are broken and frayed. Yes, and Jeff mentions the All Saints War, and Amy's like, All Saints War, and I'm not going to talk about the All Saints War right now, other than I will say we will learn a lot about the All Saints War. It is very, 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 very much a big part of this story and these characters. It is something that took place a long time before any of them were born. Long time before any, including Jeff's grandmother. A long time before any of them were born, but it plays a very big part in the history of not only the Logic Smiths and this world, of Aravana, but also these characters specifically. And this is Amy talking about what it is that she does. She's a junior archaeologist, and I'm not sure. I think I mentioned it when she was first introduced. I can't remember these things. Sad, but yeah. And she's just kind of, Aravana has almost 6,000 year history that's recorded, I think. 6,000 years of like really recorded. Not like, our history is kind of sketchy, if you go further than like 2,000 years back, stuff is really hard because a lot of our ancient civilizations are gone. This is a world where a lot of those ancient civilizations are not gone. They just kind of morphed into contemporary civilizations, and so you have massive. It's kind of my whole wondering what would happen to a world where they didn't lose any of their history. I feel like a lot of Earth's history has been lost, mostly due to loss of cultures. Their entire cultural civilizations that have been lost, at our own hands or by nature, and they're gone. And all we have are fragments of records that are left, and so we don't know really what life was like then, and so it leaves us with all we know is kind of contemporary history, and it becomes more solid the more contemporary it becomes, but it's like what, 2,000-3,000 year history. It's kind of sketchy, yeah, kind of, but these guys were talking like 6,000 year history or so, and almost 6,000 years. It's like 5,000. What year is it? I forget what year. I'm sorry that you have to suffer through. I'm trying to figure things out. I'm trying to remember exactly what year it is. It's supposed to be the year. Looking through my book. Oh wow, I can't find it. You get to hear me turning pages. Hooray! Instead of going through this story, I'm flipping through pages in a book, so they're trying to find one stinking date. Oh no! That's my bookmark. Oh man. I know it's right around there. Here we are. Let's see, the current year is 5896. Yeah, so 5,896 years. That's how long, that's all of their recorded history. Can you imagine that many years of recorded history? I mean, solid recorded history. Where you can look it up in books and you find a yearly, books on one entire year that took place in a country's history or something like that. I mean, there's very little loss of culture, and that's part of the problem. With like what Amy is saying here is that there's a lot to learn. And she's just a junior archaeologist, and I mean something like the All Saints War isn't even really in her field. The All Saints War, that's not directly in her field. It branches definitely over into it, but whatever. But I mean, that's a lot to think about. I mean, for these guys, that's a lot to take in, and part of it plays into what's going on now, where for the first time in 5,000 plus years of recorded history, for the last 200 something like 200 plus years, history is being purposely destroyed. It's being destroyed on purpose by the Crimson Kings. The lineage of the Crimson Kings, are purposely trying to eradicate all everything relating to logic smiths, that entire world. So they're kind of going backwards and destroying everything from now on. And it's like, some grand library of knowledge, being destroyed, and this entire culture, is based on loving history, and that's a tragedy. So it's a serious situation that's going on. But so in come our bandits and the mech, a little steam-powered mech. Jeff is just not amused. He's actually very used to this kind of thing. This kind of thing happens in the area a lot because it's sort of an outlawed. It's not outlaw. I guess an outlaw world. Not world, but outlaw area. Like there is no true law. Like there are no law enforcement agents. There is no military per se in the area. The people govern themselves. And so you do get some bandits that show up every now and then, and Jeff's kind of used to them. I will make a comment about something that I am noticing now, and I'm so used to it that it hasn't really struck a chord with me at all. I love these guys. They were supposed to have little bit of a bigger purpose in this story, but I did take a little bit out of it because it ultimately didn't suffer. Like their part in the story didn't really suffer. It remained a transition. Anyways, I was going to mention the textures. The textures in this book exist, but I was very much so using Photoshop 6 at this point, not CS3. And the only way that I could get textures in this, all my oat textures, was to replicate them in a way of there. I don't always I don't compress every single. I guess merge is a probably better word. In Photoshop, you can merge all your layers, and and turn the file into any kind of file you want. And generally, what I do is after I'm finished coloring, I merge all the layers down to one single layer, and then convert it to a PNG, and that's it. I don't keep the PSD files because that's a lot of space on a hard drive, whether internal, external, whatever. I have several gigs worth of pages that are just in like PNG form. So you can imagine how much bigger it would be in a PSD form, because those are bigger files because they're in multiple layers. And also, I just I don't believe in holding on to that kind of stuff. I mean, this is what I want people to experience, not all the other stuff. And I have no reason to archive it for myself, really. But every now and then I come across a page where I go, I like the way that I constructed that. I like that. I think I'll save a version of this as a PSD where all the layers are separate, so that maybe sometime in the future I can reference it, and maybe use that same technique. And what I had done was I had actually done rock textures in the past, and I had set up an emergency kit. And by creating several pages and not merging them, like making copies of them that were unmerged. And so what I did was I took those textures and I would bring them in and I overlay them on top of basically this outline of this rock that Jeff is standing on and Amy's stepping out onto. That was just a solid color. And then what I did was I took the texture from the other picture, a completely different issue. I took that texture and I would lay it in and then duplicate it a million times over and shift all the pieces around in different ways so that it looked full, like I had texture across the whole thing. Because some of them were big chunks and some were little chunks. And I just took them and I moved them and shifted them all around until I had one nice full picture. And then I converted them. But all of that, I mean, is just, I trimmed around the edges and stuff so that they were clean and within the rock shapes. And that's how I sort of, I guess, faked my textures that I've been using prior. And it's just adaptation, you just adapt to the situation. I couldn't get to my textures at this point, so I had to find another way because I really didn't want to portray the Red Castle without it looking like rock, without those textures. Those textures were built, they were made, excuse me, for the Red Castle, and I just been using them on other stories and just kind of playing around, getting used to them. But this is what they were made for, and so I had to fake my way through, and the end result is somewhat okay. I mean, I liked it, but I tried not to draw too much attention to them. Of course, now that it's easy to spot that, yeah, they look a little odd. They look a little bit weird. They're not perfectly aligned or constructed the way that other ones were or are after this. Yeah. I always thought that was kind of weird, Amy asking Jeff not to kill. Up to this point, she doesn't really know Jeff as a killer, but it's easier. Well, You know what? I'd rather not explain it because it was weird to put it in there then. It makes more sense now because there are a couple of things where I sort of jumped the gun on some dialogue and put things in that shouldn't have been. That was one. Amy being concerned about such a thing isn't necessarily something that she should have said at that point. Later on she could, but not at this point, you know. She hadn't really witnessed too much of Jeff, but I've since created a solution to that. So that'll come up a little bit later. And it ties into, I was able to tie it into the rest of the flow of the story. I probably shouldn't have even brought it up. So, ooh, look, Jeff running. Destruction. Yeah. I had fun with this picture. Wow. The little splashes. I really wanted the rocks to come off as wet. I wanted you to get an idea that it's moist down in the bottom half of this area. You know, the rocks, I mean, you can walk around on them, but you have to be careful because you might hit a patch where it's just, there's no sunlight really coming in to dry the surface area. So, yeah. So Jeff slips on a rock. Wow, that's bright. And he gets punched in the process of falling. And I like that. It just made sense. I was tired of Jeff always running into battle and always coming out on top. It just didn't make sense because it's not realistic for him or for this world for him to run in and punch and beat and fight his way out, especially against full-grown adults. I mean, I understand that, you know, he's a logic smith, so he has a bit of an upper hand. Oh, you know, he's at an advantage over a regular person, but I wanted to also be realistic about it. And sometimes, even if you have an advantage, you can be at a disadvantage. And this very much so is the case. I mean, slippery rocks. You can't account for slippery rocks. So, and then someone might take advantage of the fact that you slip in the middle of a fight. And that's what happened. And, ouch. I like this fall. It doesn't look quite as painful as I wanted it to. I really wanted it to look like he really landed on his arm and his shoulder and stuff, but I'm fine with this. I like the little splashes of water. But this is cool. You know, he grabs the guy by the foot and flip. And that to me is very Jeff-like. You know, Jeff running in and punching his way through stuff with, you know, not necessarily anger, but just, I'm Jeff, punch, 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 isn't really Jeff. It's not how he got to be where he is. It's not how he got to be who he is, which will go into later stories. Actually, the Golden Runes mini arc, we kind of talk about it a little bit more. But more on that later. Later commentary. But I mean, he's kind of smart. He's a little fast, you know, when it comes to, you know, being strategic, you know, in under pressure, like in the middle of a fight. You know, he thinks kind of quickly, and that's definitely something that's necessary for a logic smith to survive. You know, they have to be a little quick, you know, because well, one, logic is very difficult, and especially if you're up against someone else that's a logic smith, you definitely have to be quick. But I don't even remember why I was talking about this. Let's just keep going. Sorry if I seem a little flaky. I just, you know, I keep catching myself going off on these tangents that are kind of spoiler-tastic. And really staring off into these textures. Oh my goodness. I wish I had put more detail in the mech. There's supposed to be a little bit more detail than that. I was just being lazy at this point with the art. I just drew it. Actually, I think I lost the original design sheet for this mech, and I just went from memory. So it's a little different than the original. and I try to alter that later on. I change it up a little bit more to its original design, but whatever. Art is art. Art is always evolving. Even in a comic book series, it's constantly evolving. So, the fact that it's bland here and better looking later just means that I took more time with it. I understood what I was doing a little bit better, and I was honestly having more fun. Yeah, that guy, that little mole guy. I don't know. He's just funny looking. His steam rifle is actually what that is. The little canisters on the ends. I suppose I'll probably have to explain how the steam pistols and such steam rifles work. I'll have to upload that item sheet to the Goblin data book in the Goblin group on DeviantArt. But yeah, those little canisters. It's pretty much the same way a CO2 cartridge works on an air rifle or air gun or something like that, and you can consider what's coming out of there as the pellets or whatever you might put in one of those guns, the ink cartridges or whatever, but not for them. I mean, for them it's real lead, or metallic ammunition, piercing rounds, not rubber bullets or anything like that. But yeah, those are little compressed cartridges, and the compression is far more intense than anything I've ever handled, and I don't really handle those kinds of guns really. I have, but not on my, not. I don't go out of my way to do it, rather. But for the sake of studying them and understanding them, yeah, because I just thought that was a little bit more interesting technology than just your average gun, So Jeff totally just running out, and there it is again. His that stride that he has. I like that. He has this wide sort of stride when he runs. Oh yeah, I love this sequence. That hand was built separately on a different piece of paper, just so I could do this and have it pop off and clunk on the ground. A lot of these pages were actually added later, like the book was complete and then I filled it out. The book was complete and I filled it out a little bit later before I committed 100% to the final product, because it looked like the story just went too fast. Like the guy pursues Jeff and like none of these pages existed. Jeff ran from the guy shooting and then did an incantation and cut the arm off, and that's kind of where it was, where you didn't see any of this, where he was dodging and moving out of the way and stuff like that. And I thought it was too cut and dry initially, and I was like, no, Jeff should definitely be kind of trying to move out of the way of. I mean, this guy has a gun and he's in a mech, and it's like I want the mech to be relevant, not just a prop. I want it to be slightly relevant because it had relevance later on in the story. And, we'll talk about that when that issue comes. Yeah, it went straight to this. And so I added those other pages in to maintain kind of a better flow, a better narrative, to tell a story a little bit better. And I think it did, I think it helped. Yeah. That poor mech. Through so much. It's like pneumatic machinery, like the hosing, the way it's working. It's electrical to some degree, which you would think would be kind of dangerous for that guy, sitting in there in the water with exposed, whatever, But Yeah, I guess I'll talk about that part. He actually mentions the fact that Jeff is a logic smith, which if you turn in someone on Eravana, if you turn in someone to the EOS, the Empire of Sands, you would actually be rewarded. And for these guys, for a couple of bandits, if they could actually capture a logic smith, and I mean, you don't have to go all the way up to the Empire of Sands. You could make a call, and they'll come and they'll pick them up, which was what was happening with J. Mephisto way back in issue 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, and 5. Is they were coming to pick him up. You call and they'll come and pick him up, and cart him away, and you'll be rewarded nicely. And that's what this guy is thinking, but it doesn't quite work out that way for him. He loses his gun, most of his mech. Yeah, later his life. Oh my. So they're stopped by a mysterious person, and talking about the Hydrodescono Gutstown Law of 5784, which is really their it's a law declaring that they govern themselves. They are their own law, and there are some people that are a little bit more in charge of that than others. They're not official law. They're not like law. They're not like police officers, but people respect them more, and because they just seem a little bit more honorable, and to care more about the entire community. And so that's kind of what's going on here, and that's what that law was about. The people govern themselves, but in order to govern yourself, you have to put definitive laws in the sand, and one of those is we will not prey on each other, and so that's what's going on. They're not supposed to be doing that. Someone comes into town, you're not supposed to prey on them. You let them go about their business. You find another way to make money. You find another way to eat. You find another way to do what you need to do to survive, but you do not prey on another living person. So yeah, and he comes in as a law, this cloaked fellow, and initially I had the guys in the background conversing and let's get out of here, and then they you see them leave, but instead I decided to cut that part, and you just if you look at the background, you see them eventually leaving. And Jeff talking about the TASM 44 double cylinder, 30 round double cylinder. It's a cursed weapon. I don't know how to explain cursed weapons, really. Cursed weapons more so are an artifact from a different story that I've kind of brought over into this, because I'll be honest, there are several stories that started out at the same time. Goblin and a couple of other series started all of them started out at the same time. Because of that, they all kind of started from a core set of ideas and then took life all on their own. But as from 2000, 2001 to now, what is it, 2011? Ooh, I almost said 10. 2011. All those stories have expanded and they've cross-pollinated, and some things have, moved out of Goblin and put into other stories, and out of those stories and put into Goblin, and things like that. Some ideas work in Goblin and some won't. And so I took those out and I put them in something else. And some ideas worked in other and didn't work in other things, and I took those out and I put them in Goblin. And one of the things that kind of cross-pollinated across all of them was the idea of cursed weapons and steam, like especially steam-powered pistols, rifles, just guns. And this particular gun being cursed is a cross-pollinated item. And so it's just like, it works different in different worlds, sort of, but essentially the user is cursed. Plain and simple. They're cursed. obviously. You fire that gun, there are consequences to firing that gun. Whether it fires, whether it backfires on you, or it slowly introduces some sort of poison to you over time. Who knows? Different guns, different items that are cursed in different ways. This gun specifically, I'd rather not talk about right now, but hey, that just kind of explaining a little bit more about, cursed items. Yeah. But it's his grandmother's gun. And Inter Riduha, which is how you say his name, Riduha. And we find out Jeff's full name is Jeffusra. Well, his full first name. I won't even mention his last name. I know his last name. I know his whole name, but it's not even worth mentioning. It's not necessary to the story, to knowing right now. Really, at any point in time, it's not really necessary to know. I'm sure there will be some characters that will say it, but it's not really, it's just his name. Jeff is fine. Some people call him proper Jeffusra, mostly just his grandmother. And of course Riduha, because he talks to Jeff's grandmother. Jeff takes offense because, he doesn't really like his whole name. And I mean, there's no real reason as to why Jeff doesn't like his whole name, other than the fact that it's his name. It's just one of those things, where some of us don't like how our full names sound. We like our nicknames, and sometimes over time we get used to our full names. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, oh, he's the assistant, and things start slowing down, and uh-oh. And he asked about his grandmother, is she in good health? And somebody says, I am, at the top of the hill. Uh-oh. And enter the grandmother. And oh my goodness. Yeah. So Jeff's grandmother, she welcomes him home. I'm going to stop here, pretty much by saying, I got so many comments at the end of this issue, and it made me smile. People just reacted in utter confusion as to what's going on, across the board. I mean, some people accepted it and they were like, wow, that's weird. Okay. And some people were just confused. And I want people to think about the reality of, just reality. Several scenarios could possibly be at play. That is the essence of this entire series. Several things could be at play, but not necessarily what you see should be taken at face value 100%. And more so than that, this entire world is based on my dream world. And in our dreams, anything goes. Anything goes. I mean, 1 minute you're talking to a person, like I've said, I think I've said before, I don't know. In 1 minute you're talking to someone who looks just like you, quite possibly yourself. And then the next minute you're talking to someone whose hair is on fire and it's perfectly normal. The next minute you're talking to someone who looks like a dog but walks on two legs. I mean, and just, trust me. Well, I don't, you know what? I honestly assume everyone has dreams as surreal as mine. Because, well, I've seen a result of all the weird things that we create in this world as far as artists. And I can only assume that Everyone else is having just as weird dreams as I am. And I'm just like, look, don't assume, I mean, we're talking about an alien world. This is not Earth. Earth logic does not apply here. Very little of what applies to us applies to this world. Very little. And also, above all things, this is a story. This is me telling a story. I'm just telling a story. And however I find it convenient to tell that story is exactly what comes out. So, yeah. On that note, I'm going to stop. And hopefully join me on the next commentary, Goblin 8B, and we'll pick up with the rest of this tale as we enter into the Red Castle's story arc, which I've been waiting to get to for so long. All right, so thank you and goodbye.